Hello everyone and welcome to Cliff Digital Week. We are really excited to join with you today in thinking about digital. If this is your first time with us here at Cliff College, then welcome. We're really excited you've joined us for Digital Week this week. Digital Week at Cliff is just an opportunity for us to engage with and think about topics to do with digital. And if this is your first time involved with Cliff, then welcome. We're really excited you're going to join us. There's plenty going on throughout the week, and in the comments below you'll be able to find out loads about what's going on during the week, and you can check out our website www.cliffcollege.ac.uk, and on there you should find out loads of incredible information. Today we're thinking about digital and youth work. Please use the comments below to ask your questions, and there'll be a time for Q&A at the end. And if you want to find out more, as I've said, about what's going on throughout Digital Week, then please engage with us and we will let you know more about what's going on. I've got some amazing guests to invite in. First, I'll begin with Richard. Hey, Richard, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Richard, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what you do.
Okay, so as you said, my name is Richard. I live in Manchester. Well, actually, I live in Oldham, which is just outside of Manchester. And my role is that I'm based at Cliff College. The title of my role is Young Evangelist Officer. And in essence, what that is about empowering young people to confidently, naturally, and respectfully share their faith with other young people and people around them. So that's what my role is. And yeah, excited to be here.
And our third and amazingly final guest is Dot. Dot, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
Where are you in the world today?
I'm joining from Cardiff, where I work from home, don't we all? Lots of us. I work for a charity called Tearfund, leading their youth and young adult team.
Great. And we're thinking a little bit about digital today. We're going to have a conversation particularly focused. You're both focused on kind of youth work and young adults work. So we're going to think about digital in that light. You're both involved in youth work, therefore naturally I'm guessing involved in some form of digital work. What's your favourite platform, Richard? Which one do you go to?
Is this personally?
Yeah, let's go personally to start.
All right, personally, I'm probably more of an old soul in that respect of I consume and devour YouTube.
Yeah, nice.
That is my favorite thing that I go to.
What are you watching on YouTube at the moment?
I watch a load of stuff. So there's a couple of like boxing YouTubers that I watch.
Yeah. Did you watch the fight on the weekend then?
I didn't watch the fight, but I've watched all of the kind of commentaries and people giving their perspectives. So yeah, I devour that. But also there's a few kind of Christian people that have got their channels on it that I devour as well. So yeah.
Dot, what's your favorite channel and why?
For me personally, it's Instagram. I love the idea that Instagram, it can be really informative, but also share the beautiful bits of the world, right? And tells of the glory of God. But in my work with young people, what we prioritize ourselves in is much more in YouTube for like teenagers, Instagram for young adults. And that's based on a report that came out in 2020 that shows where teenagers are at the moment digitally. And 12 to 15-year-olds, 87% of them are on YouTube every day. Every day.
Nuts. Absolutely. But then we're all the same in reality, aren't we? Like I'm on YouTube all the time, like just getting lost on. I've just been on holiday. You both know I've just been on holiday, and like we couldn't live without Peppa Pig on YouTube. Like we just devoured it every real time we're on Peppa Pig on YouTube. So love it. And who are some of the people? You shared a little bit about who are some of the people that inspire you online, particularly related to maybe your work with young people. Like who are some of the people you look to and would point young people to as great people to follow? Go on, Dot, you go first.
Few for me. So there's an account called Girl Got Faith, which is helping young teenage girls navigate the world of faith, school, identity, vision, what it means to have a dream and follow it. That's a brilliant account. Then also Everyday Racism with an underscore at the end is absolutely outstanding at helping people connect with what's going on in the world, what that means, how we can think differently, learn. And then, of course, I can't not tell you about We Are Tearfund, because
here we go. Yeah, do it, please.
of course I am. But for helping young people connect faith with what's happening in the world, and thinking about, there's a report came out last week about teenagers and eco-anxiety being on the rise. Well, as churches and youth workers, we've got to be able to help our young people talk about it and act. So We Are Tearfund.
Yeah, cool. And there's plenty of content on there for youth leaders and young people to get involved with, right? So check out their YouTube channel. Richard, who are some of the people you follow / would point young people towards that's helpful?
People that I follow, that I would point other people to follow, that I think they would feel useful to them, is a guy called Ruslan. He started off as a Christian rapper, and he's now gone into vlogging, and his content is very much looking at how kind of the Christian worldview impacts the world, how he views the world and stuff. And it's also about speaking with people from different perspectives and learning, different ways of how people do Christianity, different ways of how people view religion. I just find it a real down-to-earth YouTube channel that's very real, but also just very, very current, and you can see how it would translate into real life. So his name's Ruslan. He's someone that I would point people to. There's another person that I've personally just been like really, really devouring, and his name's called Matt from the 10-minute Bible study. And he kind of looks at church history, how things relate. So he looks at like the Catholic church history, Orthodox church history, Methodist church history, and he just kind of trying to see what is it that we've all got in common, and really trying to build this kind of unity, which I'm all about and really, really love. So those are some of the things that I would point young people to, or people to, if you're interested about like culture and how that relates to Christian worldview. Go to Ruslan. If you're interested in like church history and actually what is this thing called the church and the body, watch Matt 10-minute Bible Hour.
That's cool. And I would say, just to double down on that, like I think there's loads of amazing like young Christian people who are like doing, so I've obviously done some work with you with some of those young people, but I think also there's plenty of people we don't know about. So if there's people, I think it's really important we share people who are following, because I find, I don't know about you two, particularly sometimes when I'm scrolling through my stream, that like I want some new content, like new people to look at, to maybe change my perspective or challenge my way of thinking, or at least like make me think a bit wider than myself. And that's what I really love about social kind of media is it helps me not stay in my echo chamber, but I have to be really intentional about that. And it'd be really good to dig down into kind of in the next 20 minutes we've got left, would be to talk about some of the impact that digital's had on youth work, and maybe on your like role within youth work. Dot, like how is digital, because you've kind of grown up, been doing youth work for what, I don't want to say 10 years now, but
a while.
Let's say a while. How has it changed what you've done, and particularly as a leader of a movement? And Richard, you're starting a movement, which you'll talk about in a second. What role does digital play in that movement, and how has it changed what you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis? Dot.
I think it's really interesting thinking about that, because it's hard to separate that from some of the generational trends of young people at the moment. So 3 of the top hallmarks of this generation, so Generation Z, young people, is 3 things. 1, they are digitally native. So if you're a similar age to me, you remember getting to year 9 and getting an email address and being like, what? Got an email address? That never happened.
Yeah.
My son's 5 and he's had an email address for 2 years already. So they are digitally native. It's a completely different experience of digital. The digital space is as real as the physical space, which for different generations is hard to think about, because we had a before and after. They don't have a before and after. Equally, peer influence has always been high, among this generation, but social media like pumps that up, you know, like the peer influence of, well, this person is doing this, therefore this, and that can be used for great good and can be harmful. And then the third one is thinking about the global connectedness of this generation. So a Deloitte paper, sorry to be all like sassy today.
I love a stat. Don't worry, we all love a stat.
Deloitte did a piece of research, and one of the qualitative pieces they found was that teenagers would say they have more in common with a teenager on the other side of the world than they do their parents in the room next door.
Crazy.
This is a generation who are more globally connected than any walk the planet before. And so when we're thinking about digital engagement, that has to play into our youth strategies and our movement building. Loads of that's positive. The Bible is in young people's pockets every day. Every day is right there, you know. The ability to be inspired by Christians in Ecuador who are thinking differently about the climate crisis and becoming climate resilient, that in their pocket. Read testimonies of what God's doing all over the world. I don't know how you cannot be dramatically different when that's the context we speak into.
And therefore, if they've become more globally connected, therefore, naturally, I'm guessing they become more globally aware. Like, what's the equation? What's the end of the equation there? Like, is it more activism? Are you seeing a more active generation, like across the board, or is it in pockets?
Yeah, so what we are seeing, and we did some research called Burning Down the House, looking at youth activism, particularly among Christian young people. And 88% of people said, yes, we need to be active, we need to be speaking up. And I mean, this piece of research was particularly around climate. But when we're reading the news and we're, again, reading our social media, I personally would say that there is a rise of youth activism, but it's slightly different to before. So young people have always been activists among generations because our instinct is to rebel against the generation before and try and do our version of what we think is maybe a little bit better. What this generation is doing more than others before is doing that with young people in Ecuador, Malawi, Zambia, USA, Canada. It's a really distinct opportunity, but I also think it's an amazing opportunity for the church worldwide.
Yeah. Love that. Richard, what impact is, so you've come out of like, you'll tell us a little bit of your story, come out of one role into a new role here at Cliff, and part of your role, isn't it? It's about thinking about building movement. Like, what role does digital play on you, like on your idea of what a movement could look like for young people, and what impact has it had on Youthwork while you've been involved?
Yeah, I think just kind of summing up what Dot has said is paramount, really. I am from that generation that didn't have Wi-Fi, you know, and to work with young people that are from a generation where they don't remember a world without Wi-Fi. You know, it's paramount. So you really do have to, for me, plan in not just the physical sense of gathering people, but also, right, well, how can we gather people via social media? How can we create a community physically, but not just physically, just as important via social media? It's absolutely massive. I think the pandemic has put digital work made it even more important than it's ever been. In my previous role, I was working within a school for Manchester United, and when students weren't allowed to come into schools, we had to turn to using social media, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, to keep in contact with young people and to continue doing the activities that we did with them. It became not only just, this is an alternative way to life. For those few months or even a year, it was the new way of doing life. So social media is here to stay. It's important. And I think any movement or any work with young people that people want to do or look to do, it's paramount that you have to include social media within that.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I guess The feedback that I've heard, this is not a great stat. One of yours not, but notional feedback is that youth work in a pandemic was really hard. Like it was a grind. Many churches found a new lease of life, and we saw what happened with churches online. Many of them did things in a new way, but youth work sounded like it was really hard, wasn't it? Is that a general feedback you've heard, or have you heard some great stories from churches, organisations that found it just releasing and reflective? What have you both heard? Dot, what have you heard?
Yeah, I've definitely heard both sides, and I think we saw church youth groups go from loads on a Friday to very small numbers on Zoom on a Friday, which could look like, oh, it's really disappointing. Our numbers are really low. But equally, at the same time, those few young people were really intentionally invested in, discipled, mentored. And I think we learned something in the pandemic about, you hear loads of stuff about digital work being about the masses, but digital work is also still about the ones and twos and the mentoring. So I think we learned something about the beauty and joy of small in youth work, which is not always the story we tell. But equally, I think my team, we were really, I don't know what the right word is. The Lord just really, really blessed us. So we launched an online leadership training course called Emerging Influencers. And previously to that, we would have a few. And this time, I think we've had 180 young adults on a sprint leadership course, listening from global theologians, because online, digitally, we can invite a world-renowned theologian from Brazil and a ministry leader in South Africa to come and teach young people. And I think some of that is just the favor of the Lord, like blessing and his kindness and grace to us, but also is looking at like what are the unique opportunities that digital engagement gives us, and building a plan around those unique opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. Richard, your background a lot is in one-to-one mentoring. Like, do you want to pick up on anything that Dot shared about the importance of maybe a change of perspective on that?
Yeah, I think for myself and looking at my background and where I came from, I think there definitely was fantastic opportunities of exploring this new kind of, all right, well, social media is now something that we have to make a mainstay, and it's going to be, it's a lifeline for us to continue the work of what it was that we were doing. But it did present its challenges, and it presented its challenges in terms of like engagement and keeping young people engaged. And it presented challenges within the schools of, you know, when you can feed off an energy maybe of people when they're there face to face with you, and you can be like, okay, maybe I need to pick up the energy, maybe I need to tone it down, maybe we need a break. You can sense that when you're physically amongst people. That becomes a bit more difficult to sense and feel when you're doing that online. And for me, there was those things that I really needed to work through. Like, how do I get young people just as engaged online as I would have them engaged if they were sat down in front of me? So that was for me one of the real challenges that I had to kind of work through. And I think that it's going to be one of the challenges moving forward, that as we continue to embrace the fantastic opportunities that using social media brings us. I loved what Dot was saying about being able to offer a training where you've got someone from Brazil, someone from South Africa. You can open it up to you know, numerous numbers. That's amazing, and that's fantastic. But the challenge will be, how do you keep everybody engaged with that? You know, that's one of the challenges that come to mind.
I love that, and it's probably, we need to be honest. We're a group of relatively honest people. I know you both well enough to know that. We need to be honest that the social media has both deep opportunities, but also some deep challenges, particularly for young people. We're in, it's National Young Mental Health Week, or has been this week, hasn't it? And we recognise there's been a real impact and a correlation between the rise in social media and the impact on young people's mental health. So it's probably important that we be real about that together and have that conversation. What are some of the challenges? You talked a little bit earlier about kind of people's thoughts about themselves and impact. What are some of the kind of maybe questions, challenges that you see we need to, as a church, as people who care about young people, challenge social media and its use?
You're absolutely right that social media is not without its spaces where we need to be really careful. One of the things that this era of social media is called is the age of loneliness, which is fascinating when you think we are
more connected
than we have ever been before, and yet we live in the age of loneliness. And the reason for that, I think, I'm not an expert, but I think, is that social media allows us to settle for superficial in our connectedness. But Jesus, like God didn't make us to be satisfied with superficial. God made us to be satisfied in deep and meaningful community that looks like we're made in the image of God. You know, it looks like the Trinity. Yeah. And so how do we, and I don't know the answer to this, we are working it out alongside with you guys doing
everyone else.
How do we really enhance this global connectedness and digital nativeness of this generation, because it is what they are. We're not going to change that. I also don't want to change that. But how do we help them not to settle for superficial?
Yeah, really. Richard, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced / maybe see in your own life to do with digital and social?
I think Dot raised an excellent point. And I think I have to echo that as probably being one of the biggest challenges, that superficialness and that kind of I'm trying to pick my words carefully, so I'll say it, and if it comes out wrong, forgive me. I'll rewind. But I think it creates this kind of almost this false sense of intimacy at times. So this sense of, you know, it's brilliant and it's great to be able to connect with people from different parts of the world. That's amazing. And it's amazing that, you know what, the flexibility that social media and digitalness provides us, you know. At one point, you know, to get to maybe a session, you might really have, if it started at 7, you'd have to leave your house maybe 6:15 to make sure you got there on time. If you're doing it online, you know, by about, it's 6:50, I might as well start logging on now. So the time and the flexibility that it saves is so amazing. But that genuine connection of relationships and getting to speak to one another and meeting face to face, I think that's the way that God's created us to be. And that can never be substituted completely for that. I think social media is a great way in helping to aid that, but not to replace that. And I think for me, that's the main danger that I'm seeing, that sometimes it can almost seem like we're replacing that. And I don't think that should be the case, personally.
I think that's really good, because what that also helps us think about is, how do we help young people to understand their why of why they're on social media? So if I'm just there to chase the likes and chase the hearts and the thumbs up, then I will forever have a discontented relationship with social media. And because of that, a discontented relationship with myself, because but if we can help young people understand their why, like the young people that I follow, their accounts, they exist because they want to stand for something. They want to stand for a better relationship with the planet. They want to stand for young people having a better relationship with their mental health. You're going, that is brilliant. Somewhere along the way, they've done the work to understand their why, and they've prayed and they've discerned.
I think it's really interesting. I think two things you both said are really interesting. Number one, I think beginning to understand your relationship with social media is really important, and that's important for anyone of any age to ask that question. What is fueling my fire? Like, is it Is it escapism? Is it desire to be more liked? Is it a desire for jealousy? What's the fuel that gives you fire? Because we need to be all honest that we're all like working out our whys on social media, and both our positive whys and our negative whys, aren't we? Like those two sides are really important. And then the second is, I think we as youth workers need to help, once they've answered the whys, really support them in like enabling them to understand how to use their voice effectively, because there's also the danger of that either we shut them down because they're not ready to talk, which is what I see an awful lot, or we let them loose without the support that they need. And like the teaching and some of the stuff that you talked about, Dot, earlier on at Tearfund are doing, and to enable them to do the best they can do with their kind of, with their platform that they're given. And final question I want to ask you both is, what, if you had to give one piece of advice to yourself 5 years ago, what would it be as far as in your relationship with digital? So not, we always do, what would you say to your younger self 10 years ago or when you were 16, but probably we just about had a Facebook account at that point. So what would you, like, we're obviously all on a learning journey as well, aren't we? Like, we need to be honest that we're still figuring it out. What is the one thing that you would want to say to yourself, maybe positively, or challenge to yourself maybe 5 years ago or in the past? Richard, you go first because Doc's gone first every time.
I think I would have to point to something that Dot's mentioned and you've kind of alluded to 5 years ago.
Or whenever, or just in the past.
I was just thinking I was still quite old 5 years ago. So in my mind, I'm going to go back a little bit more.
And you're younger than me, so I'm well older.
But I'm going to say, I think that there can be this real relation to sense of worth connected to social media. And I know not even just for young people, and I've witnessed it and I've seen it, like what Dot said, you know, people literally kind of living for the likes and the thumbs up. But also that kind of comparison and comparing yourself, you know. I actually ended up coming off certain social medias because there was a point around 5 years ago that when I was going onto it, I couldn't help but instantly compare myself. It just happened automatically, you know. So it's like, oh, that person's got that. Oh, why haven't I got that? And it became this constant comparison. So I think for myself, the advice I would give myself is that, you know what, use social media as a tool. Don't use it to define yourself. That would be the advice I'd give myself.
Yeah, good advice. That, Dot, what would yours be?
Let me just read from 1 Corinthians 10, where it says, verse 31, whether you are eating or drinking or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. So really similar. I think, do not become a slave to social media. Yeah. You are not defined by it. You do not need to check it as soon as you wake up in the morning, and you do not need to check it before you go to sleep at night. You are not a slave to social media. You are a worshipper of the King, and you're not chasing the praises. Like what in Psalms, I can't remember where it is. It says he's not chasing the praise of princes.
Yeah,
that's like,
that makes sense.
Social media is the equivalent of the princes of this world, and I have no desire to chase that, and yet in my humanness, I do.
Yeah.
Instead, I'd like to live for the glory of one.
That feels like a perfect place to end. Well done, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll post all the links to the people. The one big question we've had is around the people that you've recommended, and we'll post links to them. So we'll do that. I think I know all the people you've recommended, so we'll post them in the kind of chat. Maybe anyone else that's watching wants to post people that they think are important to follow. This is a great option to do that. So thank you both for being with us today, and we'll see you again soon. I hope you've enjoyed our chat about digital and youth work today. We'll be back tomorrow with a roundtable discussion at 2 p.m. so you can join us for that. We're thinking about the church and what does the church look like in relation to digital and the impact that's having with Joe Cox-Darling and Andrew Stobart and Jonas from He's from Spurgeon, so we'll be thinking a little bit more deeply about theology in the church. I hope you've enjoyed today. If you want to ask some questions, feel free to do that in the chat, and we'll answer them at the end of the week. It may be you're watching this back, and we're so grateful you've joined us. And please do engage with all that's going on during this week, and check out the website, which you'll find in the comments too. Have a great day, and we'll see you all tomorrow.